Yvette married me out of anger with his first love. For 3 years after marriage, they were entangled. They hugged and kissed when filming, and said ambiguous love words in interviews. Netizens all say that I am a poor substitute. I never get angry. I just smile and help him clarify every scandal. Until later, when I accidentally got pregnant and secretly aborted the child without telling him. He was so angry that his heart ate and he fiercely asked me why. I stroked his eyebrows and eyes and calmly replied, "Because I don't love you. The person I love is his dead brother." The whole world knows that Felix married me to make Tang Yuru jealous. They broke up before marriage. Tang Yuru left the country in anger. Felix didn't spoil her. Instead, he turned around and married me. I wore a wedding dress that didn't belong to me and married a man who didn't love me. Everyone said that when Tang Yuru came back, Felix would abandon me. But in the 3rd year of marriage, Felix seemed to start liking me. He would make breakfast for me, coax me to get up, and kiss my lips when I was acting coquethy. At the sweetest time, we were deeply intertwined. In the dark, he whispered to me, "Darling, give me a child. Be as obedient as you." We were like an ordinary loving couple. Until the day when I was really pregnant. Before I had time to tell Felix, Tang Yuru came back. On that day, they made up. The day Tang Yuru returned to China was their class reunion. I heard that her family went bankrupt and she was looking for people to borrow money everywhere. When Felix led me into the room, he saw a rich male classmate forcing Tang Yuru to drink. He said that for every glass she drank, he would lend her 100 yuan. Tang Yuru was choked tears but still accompanied by a smile and drank it all. When she saw Felix coming, she suddenly panicked, probably feeling embarrassed. She lowered her head abruptly. Someone jeered and said, "Yuru, if you're short of money, beg Ethan. With your previous relationship, if you sleep with him a few times, he can't mistreat you anyway." Felix glanced coldly and spoke slowly. "Don't disgust me." With a cigarette in his mouth, he leaned on my shoulder and then said, "Whoever makes my wife unhappy should shut up and get out." Everyone laughed and called me sister-in-law one by one, saying they were really envious that Felix loved me so much. No one knew that if Tang Yuru hadn't suddenly appeared, Felix wouldn't have come today at all. Tang Yuru glared at me, bit her lip tightly, and held back her tears. The man who had just forced her to drink put his hand on her shoulder and rubbed it. He asked her, "What should we do? Ethan seems to not want you anymore. But it's okay. If he doesn't want you, I do. If you are willing to take off all your clothes and please me in bed, I'll give you some pocket money. How about it?" Felix crushed the cigarette in his hand. He was in a bad mood and his face became icy cold. He still felt distressed. Tang Yuru held back her tears and looked up at Felix. She said softly, "I'm not willing. In this life, I only love one person. Even if he doesn't want me anymore, I won't let others touch me." Felix suddenly exerted force in his hand and pinched me painfully. The male classmate was rejected and lost face. He smiled and scolded Tang Yuru for being cheap. "What do you think you are? A chaste and heroic woman? Damn it. If you don't want the face I give you, I will definitely sleep with you today." He grabbed Tang Yuru and walked out. Tang Yuru had drunk too much and leaned limply in his arms, half pushing and half resisting. Felix's eyes were tightly fixed on Tang Yuru. I could see that for her sake, he even had the heart to kill. Before Tang Yuru left, Felix finally couldn't pretend anymore. He took a few steps forward and kicked over the man hugging Tang Yuru. He pressed the person to the ground and beat him. With red eyes, he viciously scolded, "If you dare to touch Tang Yuru again, I'll chop off your dirty hands." The scene immediately became chaotic. Someone was recording. I quickly grabbed Felix's sleeve and wanted him to stop. He turned back and asked me coldly, "Do you think it's your turn to control me?" I was stunned for a moment, and then gently let go. Tang Yuru rushed over and hugged him, crying and saying, "Felix, Don't fight with others for me. If you get hurt, I'll be heartbroken to death. I was so scared just now. I thought you really didn't want me anymore. Felix didn't push her away. He pressed her in his arms and protected her well. Everyone was watching as he took Tang Yuru away and left me behind. That night, Felix didn't come home. Tang Yuru posted a message in the early morning, saying, "You said you would never hold someone else's hand again." The accompanying picture was a photo of interlocked fingers. The man in the photo had a cinnabar mole on the back of his hand. It was Felix. And I am the someone else, whom he will never hold hands with again. 10 minutes later, this post rushed to the hot search. My anti-fans left messages for Tang Yuru, saying, "Sister, come on. Sister and Ethan are a perfect match. You must get back together." I don't care about morality anymore. I support Ethan's cheating. I just can't bear to see that scheming bitch of a happy. Many people are waiting to see my joke. Some people also left messages for Felix. "Brother, that person isn't you, right? I've been your fan for so many years. I can see how good sister-in-law is to you. You mustn't let her down." Felix and I are bound by many couple endorsements. The penalty for breach of contract is an astronomical figure. We are most afraid of causing scandals. The agent couldn't contact Felix and could only call me and ask me to think of a way to deceive netizens first. Just say that Felix and I are together. I flipped through the album and only then found that there were pitifully few photos of Felix and me. In those pitifully few group photos, only I am smiling. In the end, I sent a photo from a long time ago. Felix is reading a book under a desk lamp. The hazy light envelops him, just like the person who always appears in my dreams and makes me shed tears. As soon as the photo was sent, netizens came to leave messages. "Look, Felix is at home accompanying his wife. Whoever says our Felix is cheating again, I'll tear his mouth apart." Everyone is scolding Tang Yuru for being shameless and fond of hype. Until a few minutes later, Felix reposted Tang Yuru's. Under that photo of holding hands, he said, "It's me." He frankly admitted the fact that they were together and exposed my self-directed clarification. Once again, for Tang Yuru, he abandoned me. Tang Yuru's fans rushed into mine and laughed at me, pretending to be wronged and then being slapped in the face. It's so satisfying. "Yvette, you liar. Yuru has given you 3 years. But you still haven't captured Felix's heart. You're so useless." Who said I want Felix's heart? I deleted all the information about him from my phone. I want a divorce. The next morning, the company called me back to deal with Felix's scandal crisis. Unfortunately, I just arrived and met Tang Yuru. Probably Felix couldn't bear to leave her alone, so he brought her along. As soon as she saw me, she apologized. "Sister Yvette, I'm sorry for last night. I drank too much and posted randomly. Felix also made trouble with me and caused you trouble. I've already scolded him. He only knows to side with me and doesn't think about you at all. What a straight man. So stupid. How nasty those people on the internet are. Saying that you are my substitute is just so funny. They don't know how much I want to thank you. Thank you for taking care of Felix for so many years." She smiled sweetly at me. I also smiled at her. I am Felix's wife. A wife takes care of her husband. There is no need for outsiders to thank. But you, being scolded as a mistress last night, don't take it to heart. Tang Yuru's expression changed. She looked me up and down twice and suddenly stared at the ring on my hand. She said with a smile, "Sister Yvette, you are wearing my wedding ring. It's time to return it to me." As she said this, she came to grab my hand. I was annoyed and waved my arm. Accidentally, I hit her in the face. Suddenly, Tang Yuru swung her bag and hit me. The metal on the bag scratched my forehead and it bled. She used a lot of strength and hit me so hard that I felt my ears were ringing. I raised my hand to hit back, but someone grabbed my wrist from behind. Felix suddenly appeared and warned me coldly, "Yvette, if you dare to touch her, try When I turned around, and he saw the blood on my face, he was stunned for a moment. Frowning, he looked at Tang Yuru and asked, "Did you hit her?" Tang Yuru shook her head with tears in her eyes and said, "Felix. She called me a mistress and wanted to hit me. When I was dodging her, my bag hit her. I didn't mean it. I apologized to her." As soon as she cried, Felix felt distressed. Hearing her say this, Felix rubbed the top of her head and praised her for doing well. "Whoever hits you, you hit back. With me here, you don't have to apologize to anyone." I suddenly envy Tang Yuru very much. In fact, I also cry easily. But the person who loves me is no longer here. The agent Yvonne couldn't stand it anymore and pointed at me and shouted at Felix, "This is your wife. Felix, are you blind? Holding on to a green tea and not letting go. In what way is Yvette inferior to Tang Yuru? Have you forgotten that you said you want to have a child with Yvette? Have you forgotten that you said you only feel at home when you are with Yvette? Now you hurt her like this. Are you sure you won't regret it later?" I subconsciously touched my stomach. Inside my body, there is a just sprouted child. Felix smiled and glanced at me lightly. Without a trace of affection. Calmly, he said, "Perhaps I did like Yvette for a short while and superficially. But now, Yuru is back. No matter who Yvette is, Li Yvette or Wang Yvette, they all have to step aside. In the past, Felix probably only liked me for a very short and shallow moment. Now that Tang Yuru is back, he is going to love her." I took off the ring on my ring finger that doesn't belong to me and returned it to Felix. Felix's smile slowly cooled down. After a moment of silence, he reached out to take it. Yvonne pulled me and looked at my stomach and winked at me. "Yvette, don't be stupid. You already." Tang Yuru interrupted her and snatched the ring. She put the ring on her own hand and found that the ring was a bit small. Her smile slightly froze, and she raised her hand and threw the ring into the trash can. She hugged Felix's arm and coquettously said, "Forget it. Don't be angry for me anymore. I don't want a ring that other women have worn. It's dirty. I don't want it." Felix ignored her. He just stared at me and asked in a deep voice, "What have you already done?" I gave him a faint look and turned to leave. "Felix, I'm pregnant. You don't need to know." Felix is an extremely perceptive person. Yvonne's hint was so obvious. I think he can probably guess 7 or 8 points. I have been taking medicine for a long time and my health is not good. It will affect fetal development. This pregnancy is an accident. The doctor advised me to have an abortion. I don't want to continue to entangle with Felix because of this child. Before the abortion surgery, I moved out of home to avoid seeing him so that he won't cause me trouble. Although, Felix probably doesn't care at all. He didn't look for me and was still living his own life well. Yvonne sent me a video. At an auction, Felix gave Tang Yuru a magnificent dime and ring. Tang Yuru threw herself into his arms with a smile. A talented man and a beautiful woman. A perfect match. Yes. How could I forget? As Felix said, Yuru is back. Whether it's Yvette or Yvette's child, they all have to stand aside. Very good. The day before the surgery, I suddenly felt extremely flustered, remembering that the jade Buddha plaque that my mother had prayed for me was still in the safe at home. I planned to go back and get it. Only when I got home did I find that the password to enter the door had been changed. Standing outside my own house and unable to enter, I suddenly felt quite embarrassed. Suppressing my anger, I called Felix. The person who answered the phone was Tang Yuru. As soon as she opened her mouth, there was a proud laugh. "Sister Yvette, today is my birthday." Felix insisted on taking me to wait for the meteor shower. "We won't be back tonight." I told him before that lovers who make wishes in front of meteors will be together forever. I didn't expect him to still remember. I'm so happy. But I can't give you the password. After all, we are not at home. It's not appropriate for an outsider like you to enter. I directly hung up the phone. opened the combination lock, and entered today's date. The door opened. The password is Tang Yuru's birthday. Inside the house, all traces of my life have been completely erased. The wedding photo of me and Felix on the TV cabinet has been replaced by a group photo of him and Tang Yuru. They were still very green back then. Felix was holding Tang Yuru, smiling very happily. The succulents I raised were thrown away with the pots. My study has also become Tang Yuru's piano room. I was stunned for a moment. Ran into the bedroom, opened the closet, and it was filled with a whole row of lace nightgowns. Not mine. The safe was placed at the bottom, pressing my fingerprint. I took out all the jewelry, cash, and documents inside with trembling hands. But I couldn't find the jade Buddha plaque left to me by my mother no matter what. That is the only thing my mother left to me. Tang Yuru also knows. So, she threw it away. Tang Yuru has always hated me and my mother. When I was in school, my mother worked as a nanny at Felix's house. Tang Yuru followed her parents to play at Felix's house. When we met for the first time, Felix's parents introduced me to them. They said that I was obedient and sensible, studied hard, and was very intelligent. Tang Yuru pretended to be very friendly and said she wanted to be friends with me. Secretly, she said about me, "So what if you study well? Desperately getting into a good university. In the future, you'll still be working for us." Her mother is also annoying, always smiling. What's a nanny so happy about? An old pauper giving birth to a little pauper is so disgusting. My mother picked me up from school and met Tang Yuru. She would smile and call my mother in English. My mother didn't understand and still praised her as beautiful and lovely, and gave her some dried sweet potatoes she baked herself. Tang Yuru turned around and threw it into the trash can, mocking my mother and saying, "It's Tinks. Even dogs won't eat it." My mother was at a loss and blushed so much that she couldn't lift her head, making the people around her laugh. I threw down my school bag and went to pull Tang Yuru's hair. When my mother saw that I was being beaten, she rushed forward and shielded me behind her. She was kicked down by Tang Yuru's friend, and suddenly a lot of blood flowed out from under her. That day, my mother was diagnosed with uterine cancer. Those terrifying cancer cells appeared secretly and then quietly took my mother's life away. That jade plaque was prayed for me by my mother on Lingshan Mountain step by step in Kaohsiung before she died without telling me. She said that the Buddha on Lingshan Mountain is the most spiritual Buddha. I held back my tears and asked her why. She smiled and said that this was a secret and couldn't be told to me. Actually, I know that when I was seriously ill as a child, my mother went to Lingshan Mountain to pray to the Buddha for blessings. She made a wish that she would use half of her lifespan in exchange for my health and safety. Later, my illness was cured. The effective Buddha took my mother away. After Tang Yuru found out, she laughed at my mother and said, "Pauper only knows feudal superstition. What's the use of leaving a piece of junk? It's better to cut off a kidney and sell a liver to get some money for her daughter." At 2 o'clock in the morning, Felix brought Tang Yuru back. When entering the door, Tang Yuru was hugging Felix's neck and whining and begging him, "Felix, sleep with me tonight. Okay? I want to give myself to you." As she spoke, she pressed her lips against his. Felix dodged. I was sitting on the sofa, watching Tang Yuru being cheap. Felix's gaze fell on me. Tang Yuru was stunned for a moment. Looking back and seeing me, she smiled provocatively. "Sister Yvette, if I had known you were at home, I would have definitely asked Felix to come back earlier. We didn't see the meteor shower tonight. He was afraid that I would be disappointed and insisted on taking me to set off fireworks. Sister Yvette, I'm sorry. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Don't be angry with Felix." I had a little wine and stood up groggily. Walking towards her, I directly asked, "Where's my jade plaque?" Tang Yuru blinked guiltily and was still smiling. "Are you talking about the jade plaque in the safe? When I was tidying up things, I accidentally broke it. It didn't seem valuable, so I threw it away." My tears suddenly fell down. In an instant, my hands and feet were ice cold, and my lips couldn't stop trembling. All I could think of was that afternoon when my mother died. She hugged me tightly and wiped away my tears over and over again. She told me not to be afraid. She said she wouldn't leave. She said she had already agreed with the Buddha. As long as the jade plaque is there, Mom is there. I swung my wine glass and threw it at Tang Yuru. The glass broke on the marble, and the splinters splashed and cut Tang Yuru's leg. She was scared and took 2 steps back, shrinking behind Felix. She pitifully shouted, "It hurts." I grabbed her collar and asked hysterically, "Where did you throw it? Where did you throw it?" Felix came up to stop me. I slapped him and scolded, "We haven't divorced yet. Why did you bring her back? Why did you let her touch my things? Why? Are you so impatient to sleep with her? Felix, aren't you disgusting?" He held me rather roughly, stroked my hair, overpowered my voice and said in a deep tone, "Yvette, calm down. Shall I take you to find your jade plaque? Okay? Don't cry. I beg you not to cry. It breaks my heart to see you cry. My jade plaque was thrown away by Tang Yuru this morning, and should not have been disposed of yet." Felix drove me to the garbage dump, speeding all the way. He accompanied me in rummaging through the garbage. A person with mysophobia was not afraid of getting dirty or smelling bad anymore and got his hands full of mud. From darkness until dawn was breaking faintly, I found nothing. When the sun rose, I suddenly felt extremely helpless. The golden light on the horizon stabbed my eyes. I bit my lip to hold back my tears and held back a burst of energy, not daring to let myself cry. The old couple at the garbage dump felt sorry for me and also came to help me look for it. Finally, when I was on the verge of despair, the grandma called out to me, "Girl, come and see. Is this it?" I stood up abruptly. In an instant, the world spun around. Without caring about so much, I pulled out my shoes from the garbage dump and ran over. The grandma was holding a sandwool box in her hand. Inside the box were pieces of jade in disarray. It was my jade plaque. But it was really broken. Actually, I should be happy. It's good as long as it's found. It's good as long as it's found. I tried to smile, but just as the corners of my mouth moved a little, big tears fell one after another. "Mom, you said that as long as the jade plaque is there, you are there, right? But now that the jade plaque is broken, will you still be there? Can you not leave? Don't abandon me." Felix reached out and pulled me into his arms and comforted me, saying, "Don't be sad. Wait for me to find someone to repair it." I pushed him away and shook my head, saying it was okay, and there was no need. After a moment, Felix's voice cooled down. He almost gritted his teeth and scolded me. "Yvette, every time you tell me it's okay, I really want to strangle you to death. Will you die if you rely on me once?" I looked at him quietly. Felix's cell phone suddenly rang. It was Tang Yuru calling. He hesitated for 2 seconds and still answered it. Tang Yuru was crying on the other end. "Felix, I originally wanted to find you guys and apologize properly to Sister Yvette. But I got lost. There's a man following me. I'm so scared." Felix could no longer care about me. He turned and left. Coincidentally, the hospital also sent me a text message. "Today is the day I made an appointment for an abortion. On the day Tang Yuru gave birth, I lost my mother and my unborn child whom I had never met." Before entering the operating room, the anesthetic began to take effect. I fell into a dream of memories. That year I was 16. With my own efforts, I was admitted to the top high school in the country. I entered the same school as Tang Yuru, Felix, and the boy I loved. From then on, my nightmare began. I didn't understand why Yuru liked to bully me so much. She and her friends stuck their leftover chewing gum in my hair, and threw their used sanitary napkins into my school bag. They would trip me when I passed by. They would also pour dirty water on my head when I was in the toilet. I wasn't without resistance. The teachers all knew about it. But they did nothing. Later, when I had menstrual cramps and just found painkillers to take, they were snatched away by Tang Yuru. She smiled and asked me to kneel down and beg her. I gritted my teeth and endured. But the pain tortured me in waves. I was really afraid that I couldn't hold on and would admit defeat to Tang Yuru. The classmates around were all betting on how many minutes I could endure. Looking at the 100 yuan bills in red on the table, I couldn't help crying. Suddenly someone leaned on my desk and blocked me with a shadow. He picked up the money and counted it, smiling in a ruffian way. Not bad. Quite a lot. Consider it your filial respect to Grandpa. Watching him put the money in his pocket, those people didn't dare to say a word. He beckoned to Tang Yuru, still smiling, but the smile was very cold. The medicine. Give it to me. This little sick duck is adopted by me. From now on, she belongs to me. Whoever touches her, I'll deal with whoever. Everyone. Understood? He is Felix's bastard brother who causes trouble all day and doesn't study well. Originally, I didn't like him very much. But today, he helped me. I guess it's probably because he was covered in injuries from fighting with others. The elders in the family would only punish and scold him without asking the reason. Only my mom secretly cared and applied medicine to his wounds. He seemed to be repaying a kindness. From that day on, this little sick duck of mine also had her own loyal keeper. When I woke up from the anesthesia, Yvonne was holding my hand. She shed a lot of tears. I asked her why she was crying. She said I had been talking in my sleep for a long time. She asked me, "Where did the boy you love go?" I looked at the tall building opposite and closed my eyes, whispering softly. He flew away with the wind. I turned off my phone and disappeared for half a month. According to Yvonne, Felix has been looking for me frantically. The first thing I did after leaving the hospital was to go see him with the divorce agreement. Felix was silent for a moment and then gave a cold laugh. He glanced at the agreement roughly twice, and then threw it on the coffee table. Looking up and staring at my stomach, he said slowly, "Before divorce, is there something else we haven't talked about?" I smiled calmly and replied to him, "There was before. But now, there isn't. I got rid of the child. Don't worry. You have no worries." Felix's pupils trembled and he was stunned for 2 seconds. He lowered his head and suddenly laughed. "Yvette, you disappeared for half a month just to do this? Huh? I was afraid you'd be sad and searched all over the country for experts in restoring jadewares. And then, this is how you treat me." He reached out and pulled me down on the sofa, confining me under him, and asked fiercely, "Why do you treat me like this? How dare you? How can you be so heartless?" Probably in the past, I was too obedient. Everyone thought that I loved Felix deeply, including himself. I looked up at his face and gently stroked his eyebrows and eyes. I told him calmly, "Felix, the person I love has never been you. The way you lose your temper is really ugly. You are less and less like him, looking for a substitute. At the beginning, it did bring me some comfort. But after a long time, you will find that when he smiles, it's not him. When he doesn't smile, it's not him either. Even his hug is not as warm as his. I'm tired of it." Felix knows who I'm talking about. Suddenly, his tears fell and landed on my cheek. Really, having lived a long time, you can see all kinds of strange things. The lofty Felix didn't even cry on the day Tang Yuru left. Today, he actually cried for me. It's really interesting and disgusting. I wiped the water on my face in disgust and said to him, "Don't feel wronged. The beginning of our relationship was originally a transaction, wasn't it? You took me as a tool to vent your anger. I took you as a substitute for entertainment. We don't tow each other." Before I finished speaking, Felix interrupted me. Suddenly, his eyes were red. At that moment, his expression was like a lost puppy. He said, "Yvette, you have no right to say we don't tow each other. Do you know that when I gave Tang Yuru a ring, I wasn't happy at all. I tried to love her like before. But all I could think about was you. When you disappeared, I would wake up in the middle of the night in panic. Yvette, you made me fall in love with you, and then say we don't to each other? Fuck this. We don't toe each other. As he spoke, he reached out and pinched my face. Like a fierce wolf, he gritted his teeth and threatened me. Want a divorce? You're dreaming. Tang Yuru, who had been hiding in the room and eavesdropping, pushed open the door and walked out in a daze. Standing in the middle of the living room in a mess, she choked and asked in a low voice, Felix, what are you talking about? When Felix was about to get up, I reached out and grabbed his tie and pulled him closer to me, catching a glimpse of Tang Yuru clenching her fist out of the corner of my eye. I smiled. I asked Felix. Back in school. Although we weren't in the same class. But you should know. Right? How did Tang Yuru bully me? You can try to beg me not to divorce. But the first condition is that I want you to take back all the money you gave to pay off her debts. Now. Let her get out of here. Tang Yuru was anxious and sad while crying. Felix. Everyone is young and ignorant at times. Right? Moreover, you also know that I was just joking with Sister Yvette. If she's angry, I'll apologize to her. Okay? As she spoke, she knelt down on the ground and begged. Sister Yvette, I only have Felix. Please don't take him away from me. Okay? Felix, you've seen how terrifying those debt collectors are. If you really don't want me anymore, if you take back that money, I might be. Felix frowned. He stared into my eyes. After hesitating for a long time, he still said, I'm sorry. He's always like this. Saying he loves me with his mouth. But when it comes to making a choice, he always sides with Tang Yuru. So hypocritical. I smiled and slapped him, scolding him. Then what were you pretending to be so affectionate just now? You don't have to apologize. Actually, I was just teasing you. Felix, who you love has nothing to do with me. Felix's eyes hurt for a moment, and then gradually became cold. He pushed me away. He walked up to Tang Yuru and slowly held her in his arms, comforting her softly. Good girl. Don't be afraid. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have talked nonsense. I won't want anyone. I won't abandon you either. I promise. Tang Yuru pounded his shoulder and cried pitifully. But she hugged his neck tightly, and didn't dare to let go. Looking at her frightened appearance, I felt really satisfied. On the day I divorced Felix, Tang Yuru also followed. She held Felix's hand tightly, afraid that if I gave Felix some love potion, he would be hooked away. When she got the divorce certificate, she obviously breathed a sigh of relief. Taking advantage of Felix going to pick up the car, she came to provoke me again. Taking advantage of our quarrel. You've been Mrs. Ethan for 3 years. Just consider it as my gift to you. Yvette. Remember, you will always be the little pauper born to an old pauper. In the future, be careful. When I play with you to death. I reached out and grabbed her hair. She screamed in pain. I got close to her ear and whispered to her with a smile. Tang Yuru, I have evidence of you killing someone in my hand. She froze and her face instantly became panicked. I stared at her satisfactorily and continued. But don't worry. I'm not as vicious as you. I don't want you to die. I just want you to be in a state worse than death. After we officially announced our divorce, Felix could never take off the label of cheating during marriage. He didn't care. He is a male star. Moreover, for him, such a scandal is really harmless. There will always be people who will choose to forgive him. He began to take Tang Yuru to various public occasions, issue announcements to whitewash her, and pave the way for her to act. Felix is rich and powerful. Such a small matter was quickly handled. When we met again, Tang Yuru had already finished filming a big-budget movie and made a high-profile comeback. Tonight is the birthday of an old senior. I can't not come. As soon as I arrived at the entrance of the banquet hall, I saw Enyu greeting me while holding Felix's arm. Sister Yvette. Long time no see. I heard that you recently filmed a movie with Inishthine? Are you in trouble? Why has your resource level dropped so much? In front of Felix, Tang Yuru always pretends to be very well behaved. She has also forgotten the words, I said that I would make her life worse than death. Probably. Seeing that nothing has happened for so long, she thinks I was just scaring her. Yvonne disgustedly retorted to her, Miss Dang. Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. Inishthine doesn't mean a downgrade in resources. That director has won an international award. How offensive your words are. Tang Yuru's expression changed and then she smiled again. She gently leaned on Felix's arm and said coquettely, it doesn't matter if I offend people. Anyway, I have my husband. We used to be like this. I cause trouble and he takes care of it. As long as he is there, I am not afraid of anything. I was too lazy to pay attention to her. After handing over the cash gift and signing my name, I was ready to leave. Tang Yuru suddenly called out to me and took out an invitation card from her bag. Sister Yvette, I forgot to tell you. In October, I will marry Felix. I hope you can come. Felix frowned and glanced at her gently. No one expected that I would stop. Look at the pink invitation card. And take it with a smile. I chatted with Tang Yuru for a while. Your confidentiality work is really good. I haven't heard anything about it. Unlike at my time, your husband insisted on live streaming the whole process and couldn't wait for the whole world to know that we got married. It seemed glorious. But actually it was quite annoying. Seeing Tang Yuru's expression change, I turned and left. And then threw the invitation card into the trash can. Mr. Felix and Miss Tang Yuru, I hope you have a wedding that you will never forget. I heard that because of the wedding, Tang Yuru quarreled with Felix for a long time before changing the secret wedding into a live streaming of the whole process. She is so stupid. What's so good about a publicly showy wedding? What Felix really wants to give her is protection. But unfortunately she doesn't understand. I count the days and wait for the day they get married. I want them to stand publicly in front of the world. As husband and wife. Living and dying together. Sharing the same fate. After that class reunion, I received an anonymous video. I don't know which old classmate it was. He told me, Ethan's death was not a suicide. Sorry. I didn't dare to tell you before because I was afraid of being retaliated by Tang Yuru. Ethan. It's been a long time since I heard someone mention his name. That night, I watched that video repeatedly and finally knew why he died on the day he fell from the top floor. On the day I was going to confess to him. It turns out it was because of me. On the day of Felix and Tang Yuru's wedding, I stayed in front of the live broadcast, fearing to miss their happy expressions. Tang Yuru was wearing a haute couture wedding dress and walked gracefully on the flower path covered with white roses. Felix was waiting for her at the end. So gentle. It was worthy of the words, lovers finally get married. Under the witness of the pastor, they confided their hearts to each other and vowed to always be loyal to each other. Through life and death. And never abandon each other. The commotion started from this moment. Suddenly, a large area of video appeared on the internet. A location was on the top floor of the school. There were two people in the picture. Clearly visible were Tang Yuru's slightly immature face and another boy who looked very much like Felix. It was snowing that day. Tang Yuru was standing on the edge of the rooftop. Teetering. She cried and asked the boy, do you rather watch me die than be with me? The boy was a little impatient. How many times do I have to say it? I have someone I like. Are you deaf? Tang Yuru didn't believe and continued to make trouble unreasonably. Who is the person you like? Who is it? No one in the school is more beautiful than me. Could it be that bumpkin Yvette? Why does she deserve it? I have liked you for 2 years. I like you so much that I can even die for you. Does she dare? Probably unable to hear the person he liked being insulted. The boy sneered coldly. Tang Yuru. I know very well what kind of person you are. Your little tricks can deceive Felix at most. Playing with me. You are really not qualified. I'll just say one thing. Hand over Yvette's photo. If you continue to bully her, I'll kill you. Do you believe me? Tang Yuru stared with wide eyes and didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, she suddenly jumped off the rooftop with a smile, shrugged and said, "You really have no taste. Really? Do you know how many people like me? You are just the least favored child in the Felix family. What are you being arrogant about with me? I give you face but you don't want it. Want Yvette's photo? Okay. Come and get it yourself. If you can't get it, don't blame me for spreading it out and letting men all over the world see what kind of person that bumpkin is." She took out a memory card from her pocket and held it high. At the moment the boy rushed towards her, she suddenly squatted down. That day, the road on the rooftop was so slippery and the wind on the rooftop was so strong. A boy turned into a butterfly. After a short stay, he flew away with the wind. I still remember that day. The sky was very dark. He stroked my hair and asked me to wait for him after school and go home together. I touched the written confession letter in the desk and nodded with a blushing face. Later, he went out and never came back. That confession letter is still treasured in my school bag. In the live broadcast, someone stopped the ceremony and showed Felix the phone. Tang Yuru's face changed and she grabbed Felix's collar and cried out, "Don't look. Don't look. Felix. That's not true. I didn't mean it. It has nothing to do with me that he fell to his death. I didn't expect the rooftop to be so slippery. How could I have thought that he was so useless and couldn't even stand steadily?" Felix pushed her to the ground. Her diamond hairband fell on the ground. Her hair was also scattered, and her makeup was smeared all over her face. A group of reporters swarmed up and took crazy pictures of her. This century wedding that she had been looking forward to for a long time turned into a grand funeral. It's really embarrassing and makes me very happy. Tang Yuru. When I said I would make you live in agony, I wasn't just talking. This turmoil has aroused great public opinion. People on the internet began to continuously jump out and list the bad things Tang Yuru has done since childhood. Some are true and some are false. Netizens began to discuss the influence of social status, family background and growth environment on children's characters. Some people say that there is a kind of child in the world who is a born villain. I deeply agree. Tang Yuru caused a bad influence on society. On the day she was arrested, she looked haggard and shrank her body to avoid the camera. Under the pursuit of countless flashing lights, she broke down and cried loudly, shouting, "Don't take pictures of me. Don't cyberbully me. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please let me go." She finally tasted the feeling of fear. She was sentenced to many years. I heard that there is someone who has been bullied by her and happens to be her cellmate. I think she will take good care of her. Felix was also implicated by Tang Yuru and was banned by the industry and removed from Felix's family. He has been domineering in the circle these years and has made many enemies. Immediately, someone counterattacked and bit him. First, his large tax problems were found out and his money was taken away. Then some people followed him and caused trouble for him every now and then. Someone photographed him on the streets of the United States being robbed by a group of gangsters. When he resisted, he was stabbed. His life and death are unknown. There is another very funny thing. Ethan's parents, who didn't care about Ethan before and were even very indifferent when he died, suddenly appeared and showed off, saying what a filial child Ethan was. Although he had a bad temper, he had good conduct. Their tears seemed to be real. But they don't even know what kind of flowers Ethan likes. They put a large area of chrysanthemums in front of his tombstone. I had to run several times to throw them all away. Ethan hates chrysanthemums the most. He is very picky and always says that chrysanthemums stink. I cleaned up his small home for him and leaned beside him to accompany him to bask in the sun. I really want to talk to him. What should I say? Let me think. Let's just talk about the thing that I like you that you haven't heard yet. 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 Haven't